The following is a production of Shark Flight Media.
Now entering the nexus of geekery and guy world in 3, 2, 1, mark.
Do you know what the secret of life is? One thing. Just one thing.
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
This is the Dudes in Hyperspace Podcast.
Hey kids, welcome back to an enthralling episode of the Dudes in Hyperspace Podcast, part of the Bleav Podcast Network. I am your host, Ian J. Malone. Going to be joined here in just a second by one of my partners in crime, Brom Howell. Kevin Steverson has the night off. Want to say thanks right off the top to our presenting sponsor. You know them by now. They are Chris Kennedy Publishing. Doesn't matter what you're into, folks. If it's space opera, military sci-fi, paranormal romance, urban fantasy, high fantasy, even stuff on the craft, go check them out at chriskennedypublishing.com. They are message-free sci-fi with a slice of fantasy and a whole lot more these days. So again, that website, chriskennedypublishing.com. Go there, sign up, check out their authors, check out their books, sign up for their newsletter, get yourself a free short story while you're there. So lots of good stuff happening there, and lots of good stuff happening on tonight's episode. We've got a fantastic guest, return guest, one of our favorites. We always have a good treat talking to her. So that's going to be coming up here shortly. Also, lots of stuff in the news. Most recently, the Super Bowl. Obviously, we talked a bit about that on our last episode. And if Rob Howell's Twitter feed this past weekend was any indication, my man has some thoughts on that. So don't spoil it for now, Rob, but clearly we have a segment earmarked for that. Other than the Super Bowl, though, how was your weekend?
Wow, what an amazing time did I have at the Superstar Seminar. The Superstar Seminar is basically a place where writers get together, and you get some of the biggest names in the industry. The founders include Eric Flint, who couldn't be there for health reasons, but still, this bears his legacy. Dave Farland, another founder, he passed away just before the con, but this was probably his baby all the way along, and obviously those are two great names in the science fiction fantasy world. But then there's also Kevin J. Anderson, James Artemis Owens, Jody Lynn Nye, a host of others, Jonathan Mayberry. I could go on and on. I mean, just a collection of some of the top talent in writing, not just science fiction and fantasy, but many other genres. And I went there hoping to learn, hoping to network, hoping to do all the things, that a publisher and a writer should do. And man, I can't say anything, but it was an unqualified success. I took a class on pacing from Jonathan Mayberry, and boy, I think it's really already popped as I've tried to put those things into my work in progress. I took a class on cover art from Owens, and I found some nice things that my instincts were right, but I found so many things where I didn't know enough to ask the right questions. And then there was just meeting a ton of great authors and up and coming and people who you don't know, but you will. Great time at Superstars. I'm looking forward to next year already.
Yeah, I would very much like to get on that one next year. It's definitely one I've circled on the calendar as one I'd like to catch. It was a pretty low-key weekend here in the Malone house. I spent most of my weekend bunkered up cooking. So I started brining about a 12-pound Boston Bud on Wednesday and smoked 4 chickens, Cajun style, and did beans, potato salad, slaw, pretty well the whole spread, and we had a nice time. I've got a good size crew here in Panama City that I've known for decades now, and they are all from Cincinnati. So my introductions to Cincinnati Skyline Chili, Gold Star, Cincinnati Reds baseball, like all of that came from this clan. And so when miraculously the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, I was like, all right, guys, I'm in town now. Party at Ian's house. I'm covering the food. Just show up and wear your gear. And the end of the game, obviously notwithstanding, we had a great time. And then Monday was pretty well just recoup and clean up. Went out and got some fish and hung out on the coast and just kind of laid low. So it was, all in all, very, very nice weekend here. But all righty, well, that's going to bring us down to our first segment of the night, which we like to call the news.
And now the news.
The news is the segment where we just kind of give listeners an update on what's going on with our particular writing projects. If there's anything happening with event schedules, so on and so forth, this is kind of the spot in the show where we kind of bring everybody up to speed on what's happening in our world as writers and as publishers. In my case, I'm geeked out for Pensacon. I'm going to be lighting out here on Thursday to hook up with my good friend and fellow writer Nick Steverson, and he and I are going to be making the trip over to Pensacola. We will be hanging out in Bard's Tower all weekend, which is a big mobile bookstore that attends a lot of these cons. Kevin Eikenberry is also going to be in attendance. Rumor has it Larry Hoy, also of CKP, probably going to be there as well. And we will be there first thing Friday morning, ready to rock and roll through the weekend. So if you are doing Pensacon this year, come on by, make sure you see us, grab a book, chat with us a little bit. We'd love to meet you. Outside of that, just writing continues on Last Argonaut for me. I mentioned last time that I'd spent a good bit of time kind of writing a playbook, writing the language of what it is to play the sport of warball. This past week was getting back into characters. There's one particular character beat that I've been waiting to write for a little while. It involves the protagonist and a young lady in his life that he may or may not be interested in, and it's really just a sweet scene that I got to write between the two of them, kind of getting to know each other. And so anyway, that was that. And then, a bar fight ensued and all hell broke loose and so on and so forth. So anyway, it was a fun week of writing for me.
Do all of your books have a bar fight?
Man,
do all of your books have a bar fight?
All of my books have a bar scene. Whether or not it ends in fisticuffs, maybe not. But and I've talked with Kennedy about this. I'm like, I don't know how it happens. Inevitably, all of my freaking characters end up at the bar. I don't know what that says about me, but it is what it is. But that's what I've been doing this week. Rob, how about yourself, man? What's the news in the writing world of Rob Howe?
Well, I'm still working on The Door in the Winter. That's my first Eldros Legacy novel. That's made a little bit of more progress than I sort of expected, being at Superstars, because of some of the suggestions that Jonathan Mayberry made about pacing. So that's my big thing.
Love to get him on the show, by the way. Love to chat with him.
Well, I'll see if I can't arrange that. Mm-hmm. Frankly, there were quite a few people I want to have on the show. I've got projects working. So I went into Superstars with a number of projects and came out with another number that is bigger and exciting. So there's much to talk about, but a lot of it's too soon to talk about. But my big thing now is focused on getting the Door to Winter done, and then also a Valkyrie story for Marisa Wolf. This is actually set in the Hit World setting created by Bill Webb, and it's basically trying to create a number of characters that will serve in the Valkyrie Strike Team, and there's an official name for it, but I've been calling it the Valkyrie Strike Team in that world, and it looks like I've been having a lot of fun with it, and that's due at the end of March. So I've had a very busy front half getting a bunch of publishing stuff done in the con. The last 2 weeks, I am throwing myself at the words on the page.
Nice. Okay. Well, speaking of writers, speaking of books, we have a great one on tap tonight. Someone that we thoroughly enjoy speaking with, whether it's just hanging out around the pub, hanging out around the coffee house at cons, or here on this show. Fans of the Four Horsemen universe know her very well. Fans of Bane books know her very well. And she just so happens to have a brand new book coming out this Friday that actually closes off a trilogy of hers that is very well regarded in critical ranks, and I've read it, and I'm telling you, it's fantastic stuff. So without further ado, Rob, who are we talking to here tonight?
We're talking to the amazing Kacey Ezell, author, YouTuber, we'll talk about that, and a whole bunch of other things. We're excited to have her. Welcome back, Kacey.
Thanks, guys. I'm excited to be back.
Now, we had you on episode 36, and if I don't mention, you can find it on our archive, which is on Bleav.com. That's BLEAV.com. Ian will kick me in the shins, so I wanted to make sure to get that out.
Well done, good sir. Well done.
How have you been since that episode?
I've been good. Kind of busy. Completing a lot of projects and still flying out here and living life in Japan and stuff. So busy, but good. Good busy, I guess.
Yeah, it seems like it. Did I see an awesome cover reveal with your name on it? Say on last Wednesday.
Yes, you did. So on social media, it was kind of funny how it came about, because I think you shared it on social media before I even woke up. But I'm editing a noir anthology with Larry Correia. It's coming out from Baen Books in September of 22, and Larry released the cover. Larry and I got the cover emailed to us from the publisher, and they said, here it is, it's great, you guys are good to share. But it was the middle of the night for me, so I obviously didn't see it. But I woke up and I saw you had shared it, and Chris Kennedy had shared it, and Larry had shared it, and I was like, wow, where did all these people get this thing before I even opened the email? But it was great. Yeah, it's called No Game for Nights, and it's like I said, an anthology of noir, science fiction, and fantasy short stories. And one of my favorite stories in the volume is by a gentleman by the name of Rob Howell. So congrats to you on that. Thanks for giving me such a fantastic story, man.
I am so honored to be a part of it. And so when I did see that Larry posted it on his blog, I took about 2.5 milliseconds to get that up on Facebook.
Well, thank you for doing that. I mean, it was awesome to see. I was a little confused because I was like, wait, how'd you get it already?
Magic. So tell me about your story in No Game for Nights, because I know mine, but I don't know yours at all.
Yeah, so in addition to editing the volume, I also have a story in there. And this time I chose to co-write with Griffin Barber, who was my co-author for our science fiction noir novel that we released last year. No, the year before last now. It was like September of 2020, called Second Chance Angel. And we wrote a prequel short story to that volume, and that's featured in No Game for Nights. And it's the overall concept of the anthology is that it's a study of the noir detective archetype in science fiction and fantasy. Because that's one of the things that I love most about noir as an aesthetic or a genre, is that you can mash it up so well with just about everything else. And we've got like lots and lots of examples of sci-fi and fantasy noir. The entire urban fantasy genre, you could argue, is a mashup of fantasy and noir. And then, of course, on the sci-fi side, we've got Blade Runner and Altered Carbon and just all kinds of. I mean, you can think of half a dozen examples yourself if you really, sit down and do it. So we, each of those stories features this, in some form, usually features this character archetype of a kind of hard-bitten, beat-up detective type of dude who is a good man, but not a kind man necessarily, or he's not really a good man, but he does the right thing. He's a guy with a code of honor, but it's his own code of honor. Maybe he's a little chaotic neutral if you think in D&D terms. But he our story that Griffin and I wrote is a prequel story about the main character of Second Chance Angel, the male main character of Second Chance Angel, and it really sort of introduces those aspects of his personality of why he's so banged up, what's his background, why is he the kind of person who, even though it's an inconvenience and maybe even dangerous, he has that drive to get to the truth of the story, to get to the bottom of things, and to do the right thing, even if it costs him significantly to do so. So that's our story.
I was going to follow up just with all that description. That title comes from a Raymond Chandler quote, which you and I are both really familiar with. And It's a fantastic quote. And frankly, I don't think we can do justice to Raymond Chandler's words. I think you guys listening should go search for No Game for Nights. That phrase is in that quote, and read it from Chandler himself. And of course, that'll pop up the stuff about the anthology, but we won't get into, sliding that on in.
That was sneaky, Rob. Very well done.
Yeah, thanks. So you've been talking on the internet a lot lately. So from what I hear, are you that fond of the sound of your own voice? I mean, I like it, but
I mean, I am. Truth be told, I truly am. Yeah, I started a YouTube channel. So, while the benefit is that I get to listen to the sound of my own voice even more, really my purpose in doing that is I've realized that one of the things that I like most about writing and working in this sort of creative milieu is the opportunity to build community. And it's, ever since, the events of 2020 and the pandemic, one of the things that has really stuck out to me is how much we as humans need connection with other humans. And so, that's kind of been on my mind, like, how do we do that? How do we connect? And that's, to a certain extent, it's complicated for me by the fact that I am living in Japan, which Japan is a beautiful place, and there are a lot of really beautiful humans here. But my support structure, my friends and chosen family and whatnot are back home in the States. And so, with a 12-hour time difference, connecting can be sometimes tricky. So all of these with all of these thoughts, plus the desire to promote my work and to try and build my audience, it just seemed like I felt this need to build a community of fans and friends, and so I started thinking about different ways to do that. And I was really inspired by another author and YouTuber by the name of Sarah Cannon. She has 2 YouTube channels. And I actually came across her work in the context of like planners and calendars and organization and productivity, because one of her channels is called Heart Breathings, and it's about planning and productivity for authors specifically, which is, sort of how I found it. But she's this woman, she writes mostly YA fantasy, and she's an indie author, and she has this incredible community that she's built through reaching out through her YouTube videos and doing live streams through YouTube. And she has, a Facebook group and a Discord group where she is able to directly communicate with the members of her community. And I just saw how she was doing that, and I was like, that's it. That's exactly what I'm looking for. I want the ability to connect with the people who connect with my work. And so I decided to, take a page out of her book and start a YouTube channel. So it's called Kacey Ezell Writer Life. And the focus of my channel is mainly the transition right now that I'm going through between being a full-time military officer and pilot to being a full-time writer. I want to kind of document that transition and talk about some of the things that I'm doing to make that transition, because I think that's it's sort of niche, but it's a niche that I think people are interested in, particularly fans of military science fiction, which is a lot of who my audience is. And so I've got, I think, 3 videos out right now. There will be more coming. I'm in the very beginning stages of this, but I'm trying to do weekly live streams as a way of connecting and talking to people and finding out what's interesting to them and stuff. So it's been a lot of fun. I hope you and some of the listeners, if you're interested, come check it out.
I certainly will. I have to chuckle there. I don't know how niche that's going to be if you keep, Casey Moores and Melissa Oldhoff and David Sidoin and all these others you keep bringing in to write for me, and it turns out they all seem to write really well. So that's been a lot of fun.
I keep recruiting my military friends who enjoy telling stories.
Right. And now we have the Air Force wing of the Chris Kennedy Publishing, and don't tell Chris we said that. He'll be upset. He'll be like, oh, all of a sudden we have to get 53 naval aviators in the crew. So we love having you. We want to have you on all the time. But the real reason we wanted you on the show this week is because there's something awesome and fun happening Friday, right? Something that has a bit of a Dragon Award legacy. Tell us about that.
Yeah. It's been a long time coming, but I am so excited to be releasing the 3rd book in my Psyche of War series. It's called Skies to Conquer, and it is set in Vietnam of Pearl Silver, who is one of the minor characters in the first book, Minds of Men. Pearl is all grown up, and her grown son goes to serve his country in Vietnam and ends up missing in action. And Pearl's not about to have that, so she calls in some of her army buddies from the 40s and says, "Hey, man, I need you to put me in country so I can find my boy." And it's I'm not gonna lie, it's a gritty read. There's a lot of emotion in this one, and also a lot of helicopters. Chris, for those of you who don't know, I'm a UH-1 pilot for the Air Force, and when I initially started talking about writing this book, Chris was like, "You have to put in there a helicopter combat scene. You have to. It's a Vietnam book. It's got to be a Huey scene. You're a Huey pilot. You got to do it. Like, I won't take it otherwise." And I was like, "Okay, Chris. Okay, I will." So,
what kind of publisher is that, right?
One who knows what his fans like, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
But yeah, so there's I think 3 helicopter combat scenes in there. It was I want to say it was fun to write, but I don't think fun is quite the right adjective there. It was cathartic to write. There's a lot of it's, you don't mess with mama bear, right? Like, there's a lot of that going on in this story. So I hope your fans will, fans of the show like it. And I think fans of my work will enjoy it. It's a very emotional piece. And I think that's one of the things that I'm, starting to develop a reputation for. So, and you mentioned the Dragon Award legacy. So this is the 3rd book in the trilogy. Both of the first 2 volumes were Dragon Award finalists in the category of alternate history. And I mean, it may be a pipe dream because the Dragon Award has grown, rightfully so. But I would really, really love to make it a hat trick with the Dragon Award finalists for in that category for this trilogy.
Well, I certainly am intrigued by it. It's a great. Well, I read Minds of Men, and I finished it in one evening because it was really good, and it's also in one of the time periods I'm interested in. Minds of Men is set in World War II with the B-17s
Yes.
doing their work over Germany, and the challenges. I mean, you talk gritty. That's a pretty gritty set of battles there across the skies of Europe. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And excuse me, sorry. And I should also mention Minds of Men's on sale this week for the launch of the 3rd book. So yeah, people can go to Amazon and get that at a discount if they haven't started the series yet, which is kind of cool.
So just to complete the cycle here, Minds of Men was set in World War II, Skies to Conquer in Vietnam. What's the one in between? Tell us quickly about the one in between.
The one in between is called The World Asunder, and it is set in the opening days of the Berlin airlift. And it is it's essentially a Cold War spy thriller. The main character is Lena Sucherin, who is the antagonist of Minds of Men. So she's the German psychic who, in the first novel, is a member of the SS. She's a Nazi, and I took a chance on trying to have a sympathetic main character, and I made her the main character of the second book because I really wanted to tell her story, and the story of, we talk a lot about World War II, but one of the aspects that I think kind of gets lost in this conversation is the sack of Berlin. We don't often think of modern cities being sacked, right? Like, that's something that happens to Roman villas and, Carthage. But Berlin in 1945 that's exactly what happened to it. It was sacked, and it was just the amount of suffering and pain that the residents of Berlin went through during the time that the Red Army overran it was is astronomical, and universal, really. I mean, if you ever read some of those stories or some of those accounts, it's just harrowing stuff. I mean, like you can't finish it. Like, you got to put it down because it's gonna make you cry or throw up or all three, right? So
right.
So I wanted to acknowledge that piece of it, and I wanted to tell the story of, like, okay, so what happens after? What comes after? And one of the things in Skies to Conquer that was really fun for me to research. So it's kind of cool. I've realized one of the benefits of writing alternate history is, like, you get to go down these really cool research rabbit holes.
Aren't they fun?
Yeah, for sure. And so for Skies to Conquer, which again is the second book of the series, I started doing research on this thing that was called Operation Paperclip, which was a real world series of events that essentially boiled down to, it was a race between the United States government and the government of the Soviet Union to get control of all of the Nazi scientists in the various career fields that they'd been working before the other side did, right? So
Sure.
Huge names like Wernher von Braun, founder of our space program. He was a Third Reich scientist. He worked on the, was it the V2 rocket, I think? I'm talking off the top of my head, so please don't shoot me if I'm wrong. But he was an Operation Paperclip alum, right? So members of the U.S. Army government apparatus got in touch with him and were like, hey, we're going to get you out of here, you and your family, but you have to come work for us. And you can't go work for the Soviets, because they wanted that expertise for, quote unquote, our side in the Cold War, right?
Sure.
Same thing with the father of aerospace medicine. Also, Nazi scientist, did human experimentation. That's why we know so much about how the body reacts to high altitude and cold temperatures, is because of these completely inhumane experiments that he performed on unwilling subjects,
Wow.
Yeah, it's a dark legacy, but it's very, very interesting. And so I utilize that a little bit in Skies to Conquer as one of the sort of plot lines of, why is my former Nazi psychic working with an American intelligence officer to try and find, a man who is like her neighbor and friend, but he's also a Nazi chemist, or was a Nazi chemist. And so, yeah, so that's sort of the plot line.
That's a heck of a set of stories, Kacey.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed what I've read of you in general, but these hit sort of in my historical wheelhouse, in some of my historical wheelhouses, and I really enjoyed them. Looking forward to Skies to Conquer, and now that's coming out Friday, the 18th, and then No Game for Knights is coming out in September from Baen. What else can we look for from you?
Well, this year's going to be kind of weird because I'm retiring from the Air Force this summer and I'm moving back to the United States. So you can look for other stuff from me. I just don't know what it's going to be yet.
Well, that's fair. I mean, you've heard me talk about reasons versus excuses. Moving is a reason. Retiring from a career, that's a reason. These are major upheavals in your life, and you need to get your family all settled in so you can give us, let's see, 2023, you owe me a trilogy in fantasy, and you owe Chris another 3 Four Horsemen books, plus you need another story to follow Skies to Conquer, and then you need another, another anthology for Baen, and maybe some more Second Chance Angels. 53 books is fine for 2023, right?
Maybe for some other authors. That's not quite how I operate. I am starting a new project with, as far as like works in progress right now that I can talk about. I am starting a new project with Chris Kennedy starting in March. I don't think I can reveal details on that one, but it's going to be exciting, and I think people are going to love it, especially fans of the Four Horsemen universe, fans of space opera, which, to be clear, the Four Horsemen universe is not, but there is a Venn diagram of intersection between space opera fans and Four Horsemen universe fans. That's what I'm targeting with this next project.
Right.
And then in addition to that, I'm currently working on the sequel to Gunpowder and Embers, which is a book that I wrote with Christopher L. Smith and John Ringo, and published by Baen. That came out last year. So I'm about 20,000 words into the Gunpowder sequel. And then I'm also, last summer, speaking of alternate history, actually, I guess it was just this past fall, Romanov Rescue came out. And that was another alternate history that I worked on with Tom Kratman and Justin Watson, with a little help from Mona Lisa Foster. And that one came out, like I said, this past fall. And that's a alternate history that postulates what happens if some of the Romanov children were rescued and were able to meet up with the monarchist white Russian forces in the Russian Civil War that was going on immediately after, the Romanovs were murdered in our timeline. So we are currently working on the sequel to that, where we have Empress Tatiana is the Tsarina of Imperial Russia at war with itself right now. So
interesting.
It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I haven't actually had a chance to read that one, but it's been on my to read list. So
yeah, if people know Tom Kratman's work at all, so fair warning, people either love Tom Kratman or they hate him. But one thing that the man does very, very, very well is he writes about how to create, train, sustain military units, and
absolutely,
he writes he calls it like a military procedural, and it really is kind of like a police procedural, but that's how his military science fiction and military fiction in general works. It's very procedural. So it was really fun to mix that with the historical or the alternate history milieu of, okay, well, what happens if we change just this one detail? How does that propagate throughout the timeline and change what we're doing and stuff? And so yeah, we've got cool stuff. We've got an airship crew that was a real crew that did some heroic things. We've got some brave surviving princesses. It's something for everyone, really.
So lots of stuff going on, but I suppose it's fair to give you a little bit of time so you can get back here and get settled. So.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm looking forward to it. I have loved living in Japan. It is an amazing place. I'm already thinking about, the things that I didn't get to go see. So planning return trips and visits and whatnot. But I'm also very excited to move back home closer to family and friends and chosen family and things like that. So,
yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing a beverage with you at some of these cons again.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
All right, so I think that's all I've got, unless I missed something. Did I miss anything important?
No, I've got a book coming out on Friday. Hey, go buy it, please, and thank you. I hope you enjoy it.
that was the thing I was focused on. All right, so I think I'm done. Hey, Ian, did you have anything for her?
I did, actually. So I actually have two questions for Kacey. Number one, anytime Kacey and I get together, inevitably the subject of music comes up because that's just kind of how we roll. You had told me when you were writing Skies to Conquer that it was a lot of that classic 60s and 70s rock. It was Along the Watchtower, it's CCR, it's, Bob Dylan, all of that classic stuff. So now that you're kind of through that story, can we kind of peek behind the curtain into what's your playlist looking like right now? That's my first question. Question number two is, the last time you were on, you joshed me because you didn't get a chance to talk about your Pittsburgh Steelers. So a lot of stuff happening in Steeler Nation right now. Obviously, you just had a big retirement in Big Ben. And so you are very much in a time of transition in Pittsburgh. So those are the two things I want to know from you. What are you listening to, and what would you do if you were in charge of your Steelers right now?
Oh man. Okay. Well, let me take them in reverse order. So, in my view, the success of the Pittsburgh Steelers as a franchise has always rested on one principle, and that is that they recruit and retain players and presumably, staff members who are dedicated to the organization. You got to be a quote unquote Steeler guy. That's a thing, right? And much of the success of the franchise historically has come from their scouting staff really looking for those elements of what makes a Steeler guy. So, what would I like to see? I'd like to see them invest in another Steeler guy and take a couple years if necessary to train him up to be that, franchise quarterback, to replace Roethlisberger. Big Ben was he went the distance with the team, and I think that in and of itself is pretty telling, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of thing that makes the Steelers a successful organization over and over again. When you look at the longevity of their coaching staff, when you look at the longevity of their starting players, if you're, to a certain extent, it doesn't matter how talented you are. If you're not a Steeler guy, you're not going to stay. Sure. And we've seen examples of that. So I think remaining true to those principles is what's going to spell out success for the franchise. So.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's one thing I've always admired about the Pittsburgh Steelers. For all the talk about the New England Patriot way, you would be harder pressed in all of pro sports to find a better model of consistency than the Pittsburgh Steelers. From the way they groom their coaches, from the way, again, like you said, the way they scout, the way they vet their talent, it really is just as even Steven as it gets. And in this day and age when every fan wants to pull the ripcord every time crap goes south, it's nice to have those clubs out there that aren't that knee jerk. They're very cerebral about what they do. And that's to be admired.
Yeah. Well, and there's cerebral too, but I think that there's also some instinctiveness to it. Like there's an emotional component to it of, is this guy the kind of guy that vibes with the rest of the team? Is this guy the kind of guy that gets our franchise ethos? Is this the kind of person that we can see leading our organization? Mm-hmm. And those are fairly subjective questions, but I think that by and large, the team gets it pretty right. So, and, I mean, Steeler Nation's huge, right? Like we as fans, it's kind of, so as a football fan in general, I have always admired the fans of teams who don't historically do very well. I couldn't bring myself to root for Cincy in the Super Bowl because again, I am a Steelers fan, but I was happy for their fan base to get there. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, no, I hear
you. But that being said, the Steelers are perennially a contender, if you will. And part of the reason for that is, again, that consistency. And we have such a huge fan base throughout, the United States and across the world. Wherever there are football fans, it seems like there are Steeler fans.
Yep.
And part of the reason for that, again, is that consistency. But we also, I think because the fan base is so large, we kind of get that you're not going to go to the Super Bowl every year. And that's okay. The important thing is how you play the game, and when I say how you play the game, I'm not talking I am talking a little bit like sportsmanship, but more importantly, I'm talking about building that identity of, this is who we are as a team. These are the things that we accomplish as a team. This is, we are known for smash mouth football. We are known for, we're the steel curtain defense. We are known for those things. And doubling down on those identity pieces and really investing in that is something that, again, I think the team does very well, that the coaching staff and the scouting staff do very well. And that's what makes the Steelers such a perennial favorite. And that's what makes, gives Steeler Nation, the fan base, something to invest emotionally in.
Cool deal. All right. The playlist question. What are you listening to?
Yeah. So if I'm perfectly honest, I'm having a hard time finding the exact playlist for the sequel to Gunpowder Numbers that I'm working on right now.
Okay.
So what I do when that ends up being the case is a lot of times I go back to a lot of the epic music that has no words, no lyrics, right? So Two Steps from Hell and Lindsey Sterling is a big fan. I'm a big fan of her stuff because it doesn't have lyrics that'll distract me from the words that I'm trying to write. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've been writing to lately. As far as what I've been listening to, just moving around in the car, or songs that are stuck in my head. it's very eclectic in here right now. For Christmas, my husband got a, one of those VR headsets. And there's a game on there called Beat Saber. And, so I've had a lot of the songs from Beat Saber stuck in my head because I've been playing that game because it's super fun and also a little bit active. So I get a little bit of movement there. So yeah, a lot of Imagine Dragons, a lot of songs that are incorporated in the game that I don't really know the artists who created them, but they're a lot of fun songs. So
nice.
Sorry, it's not a very sexy answer.
Oh no, listen, Imagine Dragons, that'll, my 15-year-old loves you even more now, that's speaking his language.
It's funny because we got the Imagine Dragons song pack, that you can buy within the game. And then we also got the Lady Gaga song pack. Nice. So it's like Lady Gaga, Billie Eilish, Imagine Dragons, and then there's one that's like a mixtape. It's called the mixtape pack, and it's got Maroon 5, and I think there's one by 50 Cent on there, and like Limp Bizkit. Like, it's just really random.
All right, now you can't be extolling the virtues of Limp Bizkit on this podcast, okay? I'm just saying there are some lines, Kacey Ezell, that we don't cross, okay? All righty, well, folks, it is.
I'm sorry, Ian, but the version of Mission Impossible that Limp Bizkit did was actually pretty rocking.
Oh, you guys. I'm outnumbered here. Kevin Steverson, where are you, man? I need you, brother. I'm throwing out an SOS. Ladies and gentlemen, Kacey Ezell, brand new book coming out this Friday. Check the show notes. We're going to have a link to it right there at your fingertips. It's called Skies to Conquer. Absolutely a treat always having her on the show to talk books, to talk podcasting, to talk Steelers football, music, you name it. Kacey, where can folks find you? Where can they find your books? Where can they find your YouTube channel? Credits galore. Go nuts. Floor's yours.
Yeah, thanks. So first place to start is my website, www.kaceyezell.net. You've got a listing of all my books there. And then you can also, there's a link on there that says get free stories or something like that. That'll take you to my newsletter sign up, which is basically the cornerstone of this community that I'm trying to build. You sign up for my newsletter and you can, you have the opportunity to get some free short stories that I've written. And then you'll also get like a weekly mailing from me where I just talk about what's going on in my life, what I'm working on, send you pictures of my cat, things like that. My YouTube channel is called Kacey Ezell Writer Life. You can search for it if you just search for my name, it should come up. And like I said, I've got a couple of videos on there, more coming up this week. I just realized I don't yet have a link to my channel on my website, so I'll have to fix that so that people can go in between them both. I'm also you can also search for my name on Amazon, and that'll bring up a whole bunch of books, or just search for Skies to Conquer. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is if you do join my mailing list, you get a link to the exclusive Discord server that I have that's strictly for my fans. And when I do those live streams on every week, there's a spot in the Discord server to ask me questions. So if there's something you particularly want to ask me about, that's the way to do it. So that's where you can find me. All righty.
Well, Kacey Ezell, folks, go find her books, support her. She is good people and even better author. Kacey, thanks so much. It's a treat, as always.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I always love hanging out with you, and I can't wait to hang out with you in person again soon.
All right, and that's going to bring us down to our halftime segment, which is where we pay some love to our presenting sponsor. That would, of course, be the fine folks over at Chris Kennedy Publishing. We say it at the top because it's true, folks, and that is it doesn't matter what you're into. If it's military, sci-fi, space opera, urban fantasy, paranormal romance, even stuff on the craft with Quillcraft Press, man, they got it all at Chris Kennedy Publishing. Slide on over to chriskennedypublishing.com. You can learn all about their series, their authors, sign up for their mailing list, get yourself a free ebook, and read a bit about Miss Kacey Ezell as well. And again, always a treat to have her on the show. Speaking of, she is this week's new release. We've talked about it. It's called Skies to Conquer. Rob, what else can you tell the folks about Kacey's new book?
She'll conquer every sky if it means saving her child. Pearl Silver was happy. She had a good job teaching young nurses. She was married to a good man who loved her. She had a son who made her proud every day. Most of the time, her memories of her time fighting in the skies over Europe remained a distant part of her past, something she was proud to have done, but that time was over. Her life 20 years later was very different, and she didn't have much reason to tap into her psychic power, or to stay in touch with her old comrades in arms. But when her son signed up to fight for his country in Vietnam, it put a strain on her perfect life. And when her baby boy goes missing, Pearl doesn't question what she has to do. 20 years ago, Pearl went to war at the behest of her nation. This time, she's going to war to find her son, and she will leave no sky unconquered.
Booyah. And folks, one more time, you will find the link to Kacey's new book in the show notes. So if it sounds like something that you're interested in, and it should be, again, it's right there at your fingertips. Tap the link, take you straight to Amazon, and away you go. Other stuff happening around the world in Chris Kennedy Publishing this week. New in audio, we've got Nama. That would be book 4 in the Abner Fortis ISMC series by Paul Piot. You can go check that out on Audible, iBooks, or wherever audiobooks are distributed. And then finally, in additional news, launch team readers are needed for Seed in the Sky. That is the brand new book that will be coming out shortly from Mike Jack Stumbos. It is the 3rd book in his This Fine Crew series, which is doing well. Again, you can find information on all of that and more at chriskennedypublishing.com. In the case of the launch team readers, make sure you head on over there, click the contact tab, shoot them a message, let them know that you want the early reads, and they will take care of you. So, alrighty, well, that's going to bring us to a segment that I know we've both been waiting for. So, folks, it's time to go on the stump.
Ladies and gentlemen, hear ye, hear ye.
On the stump.
Alrighty, Rob. I teased it at the top of the show, and I knew we would both have stuff to talk about. Kevin, I'm sorry you're not with us tonight, man, but we will definitely give you the floor next time around to talk about your beloved Matthew Stafford and his new title of Super Bowl winning quarterback. Rob, I was following you on Twitter kind of as this unfolded. We were all bouncing messages in our little private group as well. And, man, you were not happy with this game, and it wasn't because you had a vested interest in either one of the teams. So talk to me about your thoughts on this game. You're an analytical guy, so let's hear it.
Well, first of all, go Dogs. There's my Kevin Steverson.
There you go, Kevin.
Because he did have a dog in this hunt, pardon the pun, and that was Matthew Stafford. And I'm pleased for Kevin. Take this moment. Kevin does a great job here, but he's had a great year for sports, and I'm happy for him. What I'm not happy about is the NFL this year. Now, it happens every year. Bad calls happen. We all see it. But I don't think I saw a single close game this year where, and I watch a lot of games, not just the Cowboys, but a lot of games, where the officials ended up being part of the story. And I could go back to, all the Cowboy games where I wanted to vent, but here's the deal. I watched nearly all of the playoff games, and every single one of them was affected in some way by the referees. If it was a close game, the referees played a part of it. And here's the specific complaint I have. That game was called very well in most ways. Yes, there's the face mask that should have been called on the big touchdown play. Absolutely. But there were a bunch of other calls that were let go because they seemed to be calling the game loose. They were letting the defensive backs get away with tugs and get away with this and that and this and that. And then in the final 2 minutes, they changed all the way they called it. That's the problem. If they'd have called it the same way throughout the game, then that would have been fine. But changing the way they called it in the last 2 minutes really got in my craw. And frankly, one of those shouldn't have even been allowed to happen in the first place because there was a clear and obvious false start by essentially the entire offensive line of the Los Angeles Rams in that 2 minute period. And that is not a question mark. That's the kind of thing that is a pretty objective call. That is the kind of thing where there's a black letter law. You're not supposed to have the offensive linemen moving prior to the snap, and they did. So why are we so inconsistent? Fix the referees, NFL. There's so many ways you could do it. Why is the Sky Judge thing that you kind of added from the XFL, which actually helped, it really did, the idea that they could overturn some of these calls quickly without necessarily having a challenge. Why is that so inconsistent? Why was that not called, for example, on a very questionable play in the Cowboys game that very well could have changed the outcome of that game? Why was it called in other instances? What are the rules? We don't have any transparency. We don't see anything for the officials where they're suffering any consequences for not doing the job well. All we see is this product that we love. I've loved this game for 50 years, and I'll tell you what I told Ian and Kevin after the end of the Super Bowl. I don't want to watch the NFL. I probably will. I'll get into the draft, and I'll get into it again next year. But to have a 50-year fan of the NFL so disgusted with the inconsistencies of the referees, and this doesn't matter which team you're a fan of, this is throughout the NFL. It happens to every team and every game. Every close game is modified by the refs, and this can't continue because it's ruining the greatest show on the planet.
Yeah, no, I'm very much with you, and I'd be remiss if I didn't add Tony Dungy is very much in your camp, sir. He had some very pointed words for the league and for the way the game was officiated in the final few minutes. Really, for a lot of the same reasons that you said. Where's the consistency here? You know, you actually called a decent game right up until the end, and then you inserted yourself into the outcome of the game, and that should never, ever, ever happen. So, no, I wholly agree with you. The only thing I would throw in there is, Zach Taylor, what are you doing in that final 2-minute drill? I mean, good Lord, you've got, and I understand, all right, the big question about Cincinnati heading into the game was whether or not they could block the Rams' defensive front. Clearly, they had problems with that, okay? And I get it. Sometimes you have to scheme around that. You have to be cute. I also know there's something to be said for saying this is our identity, this is who we are, and we're going to stand by that. There is also something to be said when the game is on the line and you need to get 1 freaking yard. You line up, you nut up, and you go get the yard. And lining up in the shotgun on 4th and 1 and rolling out your gimpy quarterback behind a suspect offensive line against arguably the best front in football this year, kind of not the smartest of play calls. So, I really applauded Cincinnati for the job that coaching staff did to get them there. I kind of felt like the play calling failed them when it really was on the line in the very end of the game.
So I'll argue this point. And the reason I'll argue is the play call that got me, I agree that there was a play call question there. The play call that got me was the 3rd down play there. The draw that went right at the best football player on the planet, which is Aaron Donald. He didn't win the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He should have. By far, he should have. TJ Watt doesn't have a case if you look at the entirety of what Aaron Donald did this year. And the year before and the year before. And the only reason Aaron Donald doesn't win the Defensive Player of the Year is because we get tired of voting for the same guy. So you ran a draw play, which I actually think a running play there wasn't a bad choice, but you ran it at the best player on the planet. Honestly, the weakness on the Los Angeles Rams defense throughout the year has been their linebackers. If they'd have gone in shotgun on 3rd and thrown the ball, a quick slant, something that takes a crossing play that's quick, something that takes advantage of the linebackers, which is something I was calling for all along once the matchup was determined. Take advantage of the linebackers, they would have gotten one of those two. If they ran essentially that same sort of concept twice in a row from 3rd down, they get it once, I guarantee. And so that's my frustration with that play call.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing that we can agree upon, and Rams fans, I'm sorry if you're going to take this as a shot, but I don't mean it that way, but it is what it is. I think we can agree this is the least likable Super Bowl winning team and that I can remember in quite some time, if not ever. I mean, really, who gave a crap about this team? I'm happy for Matthew Stafford. I really am. I think he's one of the good guys in the league, and I said that on Twitter. Other than that, though, who cared about this team? It's a team full of mercenaries. They went out, they pulled the exact same strategy that Tampa did last year. Let's go buy ourselves a Lombardi trophy. Let's assemble a whole bunch of talent and go make a run at a title. It's boom or bust. And I mean, granted, I'm not trying to take anything away from the coaching staff. They did their job. History is rife with franchises that have tried that strategy and failed miserably. The Miami Dolphins, for very well the last 5 years of Dan Marino's tenure down there, tried that. So I mean, I doff the cap to McVay and that whole crew for doing the job and getting it done. But I don't care about this team. I mean, I really, really don't. I think the Cincinnati story would have been nice. I think maybe you care about the Rams a little bit more if they're still in St. Louis. But other than that, who cares about this team? All right, they won championship. I think that's a very, unappealing way to end what was really a pretty good playoff run by the NFL. But, it's over. They got the championship. Go celebrate it for 24 hours in LA, and then nobody will care anymore because that's what LA fans do. And then we're going to roll on to the draft and the USFL, as it would appear.
I am looking forward to the USFL, but that's obviously a podcast we'll talk about down the road. The draft.
We are working on subject matter experts for both of those. So, yeah. So anyway, it's a bummer to put the NFL season in the rear view, kind of on that note. But again, props to the Rams. They did what was expected of them. They did the job. They crossed the line. They are the champions. And we roll on Big River to 2022.
You got mail.
And this is the point in the show where we like to hear what our listeners have to say in a segment called Pod Mail, presented by the International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors. Folks, it doesn't matter if you're a writer like us or if you're a reader. The IASFA folks, they have got something for you, all right? In the case of the writers who listen to this show, if you're not there, why aren't you? Okay, go to iasfa.org, sign up for an account. It's free. You got all kinds of perks there. All right. Number one, networking and community. If you want to find a great spot, one-stop shop, if you will, to be able to meet other authors, get pointers from each other on the craft, on book marketing, be able to share each other's news lists. And hey, I got a special on, for 99 cents this week. Will you promote it in your mailing list? And then I'll flip-flop, that sort of thing. That's what community is all about. The ISFA folks, that's what they're there to facilitate. So again, go to iasfa.org, sign up for an account, and start meeting people, man. There's also plenty of promo deals that you can get involved there. Speaking of promos, readers, that's where you come involved. All right, if you're a fan of space opera, if you're a fan of young adult science fiction, if you're a fan of fantasy, all right, just about every month, there's some sort of a bundle going on where you can get tons of great stories on the cheap or even freebies. But again, it all starts by going to the website, iasfa.org, sign up for an account, sign up for their mailing lists, and getting to know about what's happening over there. One more time, that's the International Association for Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors, and we greatly appreciate them being a part of this program. Rob, you got something you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do. Craig Martell is one of the guys behind that, and he's also the guy behind 20 Books, 50K. He is a fantastic guy, a really productive author, a really good author, and he's also someone who loves to help other authors. So if you're ever at a convention or you ever have a chance to talk to Craig Martell, approach him. He'll talk to you. He'll help you. He's a really good guy, and I'm not just saying that because he literally said, I'm taking the check on this big table at lunch. That's the kind of guy he is. He just randomly goes and does nice stuff for people.
Nice. Yeah, Craig Martell. And folks, if you want to meet him, go back a couple of podcasts, and he was a great interview with us. So definitely check him out, and definitely check out the IASFA folks, that website one more time, iasfa.org. And it's, again, right there in the show notes, so go check it out. All right, first question comes to us from Paul. Initially, I wasn't terribly fond of the idea of a Lord of the Rings television series on Amazon. However, having now seen the trailer during the Super Bowl, I'll admit to being a little bit intrigued. What did you guys think of the trailer? Are you going to watch the show? Rob, this is definitely in your wheelhouse, man. What did you think of the trailer for the new Loader TV show on Amazon Prime Video?
I am likely to watch it.
Okay.
I am a Lord of the Rings alcoholic, and I will watch the show at least for a little bit. I have concerns. The storytelling that I've sort of seen hinted doesn't necessarily lend itself to what Tolkien wanted. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying we have to have everything the way Tolkien wanted, because we're 100 years past when he got the germs of a lot of these ideas. But that being said, this has to feel like it's got depth to it, like it's got a bunch of history behind all of this stuff. And even though this is happening in the Second Age, there's still thousands of years in there, and it's got to feel that it's got that strength and that power and that foundation. And Peter Jackson did a fantastic job at this in so many ways. Yeah, you can quibble about not having Tom Bombadil or some other changes that he made, but you still felt like it was a Lord of the Rings story. You still felt it was Tolkien. And if they're pulling stuff from Tolkien's notes, and if they're building off of that and doing it in good storytelling ways with the foundation that depth of history, I'm in. Mm-hmm. But if they're going and changing everything to suit whatever thing they think is, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did X, Y, and Z? Because man, that's something Tolkien never did, and blah blah blah. I'm not so interested in that. I want to have. I like Lord of the Rings because I like Lord of the Rings. If you change it into something completely different, I'm going to be upset. And it's the same complaint I had about Wheel of Time. I didn't mind that there was a lot of that I might very well have really liked if it had not been Wheel of Time. Except since they said Wheel of Time, I had certain expectations that they would follow the entire overarching ideals that Robert Jordan put into that, and they didn't. If they do that again here, I'm going to be frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will admit to Lord of the Rings, I loved it. I love the spectacle of it. The Peter Jackson films, just like everybody else. I am the spaceships guy in our household. My wife is very much the Lord of the Rings fan. If you don't believe me, I will take a picture of the sword that is on our mantle. That was the first Christmas present I ever gave to her when we were dating. It is a replica of Liv Tyler's sword from Lord of the Rings. That's how hardcore she is as a fan of that series. She is very skeptical about this. Natalie will watch it, but she is the last thing she wants to see, and we've heard rumblings of this, is Lord of the Rings turned into Game of Thrones. Like, that doesn't need to happen. And when I heard that, it smacked of what happened with Star Trek to me back in, I guess it was 2008, whenever J.J. Abrams took over Star Trek. I mean, the guy went on record as saying, yeah, I was never really much of a Star Trek fan. I was always a Star Wars fan. Star Trek was like science and nerds, and Star Wars was rock and roll. So, like, we want to bring a little bit more rock and roll to Star Trek. Talk about a fast way to piss off Star Trek fans. Like, that did it real quick and in a hurry. And it showed in his films. They were not... They were Star Trek in name only in a lot of respects. And that's the reason why a whole lot of fans didn't like them. Sidebar, I did think Star Trek Beyond was decent, maybe because J.J. Abrams was nowhere to be found in that film. But I'm a little worried that may be the bait and switch you're going to get with this show. It's going to have the Lord of the Rings name on it. It looks a lot like Lord of the Rings, but once you get into the meat and potatoes of it, I'm worried that the stories here are not going to be very Loder-esque. And that's a disservice to the franchise. I hope I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
But I will be watching that very closely, and I can guarantee you my wife will be. And if they go too far, she will throw a remote through our brand new television, and then I won't be happy. So that's where we stand on the loader. I hope that answers your question, Paul. All right, next question comes to us from Max. I can safely say that the live-action introduction of Cad Bane into the Star Wars universe is hands down my favorite thing to happen since Disney bought Lucasfilm. If you guys could cherry pick one of your characters to write into a galaxy far, far away, who would that be? Rob, I'll give you a point on this one. You got a character that if you could take out of a Rob Howell book and plug into a Star Wars story you think would fit?
Well, I might go with Mike Kashkala. Starts off as a private. We'll see where he ends up. And that's Rahan Kial Tala from The Feeding of Sorrows. He's the one who has, I think, some of the best backstory for this sort of thing. He's got a sense of honor. He's coming into a completely alien environment to him, and I mean that literally. He's an alien race coming into a human environment, and many of the human expectations are different, and I think that would be the most fun character because he's got the toughness, he's got the will, he's got the honor, he's got the fighting capabilities, and he's got the the personality to pull it off.
Cool. I'll give you an A. I'll give you a big character and then a B character for mine. Trip Hackett, I think, from Colonies Lost would fit nicely into Star Wars. He has a bit of that Han Solo gunslinger type of an appeal to him, but there's a lot of that kind of stranger in a strange land ilk about him in Colonies, and that's a very familiar theme to Star Wars fans is having to find your way through the world. I think he would fit very nicely into a Star Wars style of story. Digging a bit deeper into the weeds, though, there was a character I rolled out in Detron City Vice named Spiggy. He's an alien. You get the impression, because he's not on the page a whole lot, you get the impression that there is a lot more there than meets the eye. He is a character who's very well plugged in around Detron City, seems to know a lot more about what's happening under the surface than the average bear does. And I kind of allude to that maybe he's more than we're letting on, but he would fit very nicely in that group of characters like, I forget her name. She was in the sequel trilogy. She was the one of the many characters that they just utterly wasted. She was the character that they meet in Force Awakens, and she gives Rey the lightsaber and all that. Really cool character. And then you never saw her again for 2 films. But Spiggy could very much kind of fit into that mold of character. Plus, he's really funny to write. He's got a really dry, almost Fraser Crane type of sense of humor that was just really a treat to write. So, yeah. All right. I could work with that. Trip Hackett and Spiggy from Detron City Vice. Next question comes to us from Christopher. With the Super Bowl in the rear view, I'll inevitably settle, excuse me. Sorry, Christopher, I'm butchering your question. With the Super Bowl in the rear view, I'll settle now back into the off season like I always do. Inevitably, though, I'll start jonesing for football sometime around April when the draft hits. Only now I've got the USFL. It seems there's been a few news notes about that new league in the headlines of late. What have you heard, and are you excited about the new league? I mean, I am. I was a bit more excited about the XFL, and then COVID kind of squashed that. However, Kevin Steverson actually passed along some literature on this new league, specifically how it's financed and how it's funded. And I do think there is a real possibility here for one or both of these leagues to stick and get some traction. It does sound like this league is not going to fold in 2 years. It is not going to be the AAF. Like they have the new owners of this league, and particularly Fox Sports, who's a heavy investor in this, like they have a plan. And they are funded, and they are ready to stand behind that plan for the next 2 to 3 years as they gradually roll these franchises out to their respective cities. And there's going to be 8 of them. That's another thing. The USFL, they're going to play their entire inaugural season in Birmingham in a kind of a bubble style of format so that they can guarantee that they get their games in, because they don't want to suffer the same fate as the XFL. So clearly they've thought about it, and clearly they've run the numbers, and they have a plan, and they've tried to plan for every contingency that could happen here. I'm all about more football. I'm also very much about young players having an option other than college to go get paid. If you're coming out of college or out of high school, you're 18 years old, you really are sick of class and sick of homework, and you really don't want to have to play that facade, which is pretty much what that is in college. You want to go get paid right now? Fine. Go to the USFL, make you a cool $80,000 a year. They'll pay you. Get your film in for the NFL, apply for the draft in 3 years. So, yeah, I'm kind of interested to see where this is going to go. Excited? I've learned over time not to get terribly excited about spring football, but I am interested. I think this one does have the chance to be different. Rob, anything kind of grab you about the USFL? I know they've been starting to kind of pub that up.
Yeah, I'm actually leaning closer towards excited. Now, my perspective of this is a little bit more from what the XFL was. I was a season ticket holder of the St. Louis Battlehawks in St. Louis. And I will tell you that particular franchise, along with a couple of others, were going to be able to carry the XFL with the other financing they had at least another 2 years after the one that they started with. And COVID ruined it all. We were getting so many fans at St. Louis that they literally had to open up huge chunks of the Edward Jones Dome that they didn't ever want to do, but we kept pushing that number up because we had that many fans. Every one of them was a sellout, no matter how many seats they opened. So I absolutely think that there are markets out there that are starved for good football, and this can work. And I think spring leagues, this is the time when they can work, especially since the NFL isn't always doing itself any favors. I'm intrigued by the idea of starting everything in Birmingham. I think that's an interesting concept to get people, essentially doubleheaders of football. As I understand it, they're going to basically have a game and then a little bit later have another game. And I don't quite know how they're doing the ticket structure, but, that's an interesting idea to get people involved, get people in that area really into their teams, and to create some interesting touch points. I suspect that will improve attendance at the event. And I will also add that if you have It's weird. The way we look at attendance is very perceptive in the sense, and I mean that by, if you go watch a game that has 25,000 people at it on TV, and it's in a 75,000 stadium arena, and it's all spread out, it looks like there's nobody there. Mm-hmm. You watch another game, and they've got 20,000 people there, but the stadium holds 20,000 people. You're like, well, they're having success, and why not the other guys? And the MSL, or the MLS, has had to deal with that some as they've tried to put soccer in some of these big NFL stadiums, only to find out it's the one purpose-built, the one that have a good, a respectable size, a respectable understanding of size of audience, that makes those franchises seem more successful. And then once you seem like you're a success, well, then you are a success.
Mm-hmm. Well, we saw that with Major League Baseball back in the 90s when we went from having stadiums that seated 60, 65, 70,000 people. All of a sudden, the plan du jour was to have 40,000 seat parks. And I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but that started with Coors Field in Denver, did it not? Wasn't that the first of that generation of stadiums that kind of sat about that 35,000 marker because they wanted every game to look like a sellout?
Yeah, I don't know the sequence of those, but it's that same concept. You're absolutely correct. And I think Birmingham is a nice choice. I probably would have leaned at San Antonio simply because of they've done really well. Anytime there's football there, there's a huge. It's a bigger market than you might think. What with the cluster of towns around it, and I think that would have been my personal choice. But Birmingham is a fine choice too because it draws from a number of feeders around it that are more than you might realize. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good way to get it started. Reduces costs, probably increases crowd size. The TV thing is most of the time when we're watching on TV, we really don't care about the stadium, right? Because we're not seeing enough of it and we're not experiencing anything about it. We're only looking for the next thing that they show us. And so I think that's going to be fun. This
could be getting a little too far off onto the weeds, but one thing I will say for the USFL and the XFL that I'm not quite as. There are some markets that I get it you have to be in. You have to have a club in New York or in the New York market. You have to have a club in the Los Angeles market. All right. These are things that you have to have if you want to consider yourself a big league professional sport. I don't understand the love affair with Tampa. All right. I mean, the Vipers didn't turn out for the XFL. There was no huge following there. Why not look at a place like Jacksonville instead? I mean, dude, Jacksonville, you are right in the heart of SEC country, Florida Gator country, all those Bull Gators up there. That's all they want to talk about is football in that town. Give them something to watch. And I think that it would seem to me anyway that there would be a lot of very willing dance partners out there in the way of these college campuses that are hemorrhaging money in the arms race that is college athletics now. They are looking for revenue. Go to the University of North Florida. Plant a USFL franchise in Jacksonville. Play it out of the USFL or the University of North Florida campus. Give season tickets away to students. Run a student ticket lottery like you do in college football. Get young fans automatically invested in your sport and in your franchises right out of the gate. While also having facilities and everything covered on the part of the schools who are just looking to get money any way that they can. So I don't understand. It would be fun to sit down with somebody who's like a Darren Ravel used to be with ESPN. That's the money person behind all of this and have those conversations. But anyway, back to the question.
I actually have
Go ahead.
I was going to say I do have a thought on that. I think if I'm remembering correctly, the Tampa Bay Bandits were one of the more successful USFL teams.
They were, but that was 35 years ago, 40 years ago?
I get that, but maybe that's got enough value that it matters, and maybe not. But I did notice that most of the USFL teams are bringing back
right their heritage teams. Yeah, right. We'll see. I say by the time you get to the end of their season, they'll have 10,000, 15,000 fans in the stadium. It'll look like a Miami Hurricanes game. Ha ha! Taking a shot at you, Hurricane fans, any chance I get. All right,
Wow.
final question comes to us from Ann. Sadly, 2022 will mark the first year in quite some time that my friends and I have not made the trek down to Pensacola for Pensacon. Not to fear, though, we will be at PSYCHE in Raleigh. That got me to thinking, which of the conventions that you all do are among your favorites? Hard to go wrong with LibertyCon, man. I mean, that's like family get together there. Everybody's there, from the CKP folks to the Bain folks, and everything in between. Plus, Chattanooga is just a really freaking cool town. So we always enjoy LibertyCon. PSYCHE in Raleigh is obviously a good one. This is my first year doing Pensacon, so I'll have to report back with you. But I mean, everything I've heard from everybody say that it's a really well-run con, and they treat their authors and their celebs really well, and it's just a fun weekend. So I'll get back to you on that. But definitely PSYCHE and LibertyCon are two of my favorites. Rob, how about you?
Well, thank you for taking all of my options there. That's not true. There are other good cons out there, but PSYCHE has been built off of the traditions in many ways of LibertyCon and trying to create a family atmosphere. And LibertyCon, what they did there and still do, it's really a fascinating place to go. There's a reason that a few years ago they opened up tickets to sell. Now at the time they capped it at 750 tickets. There's a reason they opened it up to sell 750 tickets and had to close 8 minutes later or 12 minutes later, something like that, because they were sold out.
Yep.
That family atmosphere is huge. So, I've had great times at other conventions. I certainly suggest, if you're interested in conventions, that you go try them out. Every convention sort of seems to have a different feel, and maybe what works for me at LibertyCon doesn't work for you, or what works for me at PSYCHE doesn't work for you. But those are the two I would start with.
Cool deal. Yeah, you can't go wrong with any of those. I will give an honorable mention to Atomicon over in Charleston. I have not had a chance to catch up with them to actually go to their con, but I have met a number of their folks at other cons. They're super, super cool. Seem to be great folks to work with. And plus, it's freaking Charleston, dude. I mean, who doesn't want to go hang out in Charleston, South Carolina? So there you go.
White flag.
There you go. All right. Well, that's going to bring us down to the hour, which means white flag, which is typically where we start to wind this puppy up. It's also the segment where we kind of look ahead to what's happening in the days and weeks ahead. For me, I'm actually really excited about, obviously, Pensacon, talking a lot about that. PSYCHE's coming up next month. I'm really excited for the return of college baseball season. I love college baseball. Growing up in Tallahassee, obviously football is king. Football is king everywhere down south. But a close second for a number of years when I was growing up was going to Dick Howser Stadium and watching the Noles play baseball. We had some great players back then. J.D. Drew comes to mind. And it's just, college baseball is so much fun. It has all of the pageantry that is the majesty that is the game of baseball, the American pastime, blended with all of the pageantry that is college athletics, the colors and the legacies and I went to this school and that's my home and that's my colors and that's my squad, all wrapped up in the game of baseball. So, it's a niche sport anymore, but anytime we start to roll around toward February and we're going to hear some crack of some wooden bats or some dings of some aluminum bats, it's a fun time. So return of college baseball season is really, really what's high on my list. Rob, how about you, man? What are you looking forward to?
Honestly, I have to say, kind of sad, but I'm really looking forward to getting words on the page. I've had a very sort of busy, everything's kind of gone weird first part of the year. Not necessarily weird in bad ways, just lots of things preventing me from getting words on the page for some time now, and I really want to get some stories out the door. I mean, I think I'm a writer. Well, if I'm going to be a writer, I better write. And so I'm really looking forward to doing that.
Nice. All righty. Well, thanks so much again to Kacey Ezell for coming on to the program. It is always a treat to talk with her. Thanks to our sponsors. That would, of course, be Chris Kennedy Publishing, the International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors. And thanks again to our brand new partners over at the Bleav Podcast Network. Folks, these guys are awesome. They are the #1 podcast network on the net for professionals. Doesn't matter what you're into. If it's sports podcast, mystery podcast, thriller podcast, conspiracy podcasts, they have got it all over there. So go check them out at Bleav.com. That's spelled BLEAV.com. If you're interested, if you love our podcast, speaking of podcasts, support us, man. That comes in the form of reviews, likes, subscribes, all of that good stuff. Doesn't matter where you listen to it, if it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, if they'll let you leave the reviews, we greatly appreciate it when you do that because it helps to push us up in the rankings and it helps folks find us. Kevin Steverson, we missed you, boy. We'll give you a shot to talk about Matt Stafford on our next episode. And with that, we bid you guys a great night. We'll see you next time on the Dudes in Hyperspace Podcast. See ya.